afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm delighted to welcome you here today for our debate on the future of education. I'm David Ward, the Sales Director at the Herald, and it's fantastic to be involved in moderating this incredibly topical issue. Like most sectors, it's been a challenging year for education throughout the world, and to this end, the Herald's Future of Education campaign, launched in August of this year, seeks to provide a forum for debate and discussion around some of the challenges facing the education sector as students returned and settled into the new normal. Our campaign seeks to create an environment for parents, teachers, government, policymakers, and wider civic Scotland to ask the question, what should the future of Scotland's education look like, and how do we get there? Before we begin, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank our partners, CGI, City of Glasgow College, Skills Development Scotland, South Lanarkshire College, Young Enterprise Scotland, and ITI Communications. Without them, the campaign wouldn't be possible, and I'd like to take this opportunity to encourage you to take some time to explore the organisation's dedication and contribution to the education sector. I'm delighted to be joined today by Richard Sadler, Director of Education at CGI, by Tom Duff, Associate Director of Learning and Teaching Academy, City of Glasgow College, Ross Tuffy, the Chair for Digital Technology Skill Group at Skills Development Scotland, Aileen McKechnie, the Principal of South Lanarkshire College, and finally Brian McEwen, the Business Development and Evaluation Manager for Young Enterprise Scotland. Now, without further ado, I'd like to pose the opening question to Richard, if I may. And Richard, can I ask, does the Scottish education system enable and inspire an entrepreneurial mindset?
I think my instant answer is yes. From what I've seen, there's a couple of points, a couple of key points for me. We see that the technology is sort of allowing the teachers to broaden the outcomes that they do with the students. Students can create podcast videos, diagrams where before they were probably just doing it back in sort of written terms. So, you know, for example, in Hoyk, in the Borders, where we're working with Scottish Borders Council, they're doing video books as part of their English literature work. So, yeah, I would say yes. I think the other bit is developing the skills of entrepreneurial leadership. So things like, you know, coding, problem solving, assessing risk. So I think there's a good crossover between technology and you know, the vocational skills that you need to be an entrepreneur. So I would say, from what I've seen in my engagements in Scotland, absolutely, yeah.
Great, thanks, Richard. And I think that's an important point, in that, you know, from entrepreneurship, it's not just those that go on to be entrepreneurs. It's creating that entrepreneurial mindset within organisations and the chance to, you know, create and innovate.
Yeah,
fantastic. Now, I'm going to pose the same question, Aileen, if you don't mind. What do you believe in terms of the Scottish education system? Do you think it enables and inspires that entrepreneurial mindset?
Thanks very much, David, and delighted to be here today. So I guess I would be a little less positive than Richard. I think there's a mixed approach to this. I think the Scottish Government has worked really hard over recent years through its Developing the Young Workforce programme, for example, to drive a much wider perception of what is possible for young people in terms of their ambition and their ability, and you know, and the drive to create greater parity of esteem across colleges and universities as part of the, you know, the post-school opportunity is all part of that journey. But I think we're still on a journey of seeking to really, you know, generate creativity, to encourage and enable innovation and creativity in, you know, in schools and across the wider education system. But it's, you know, it's a journey that we're all on in partnerships, so schools, colleges, universities, private training providers, other parts of the system, working closely with industry, really seeking to understand what the opportunities are of the future economy. So it's today's jobs and tomorrow's jobs. What might they be? How might you expose them to young people in terms of the choices that they make? And how might you enable young people to think about starting up their own business, as opposed to the very traditional routes that we ordinarily encourage through schools? So, you know, the kind of school, university, profession type route. There's so many opportunities, so many varieties of different possibilities for young people now. And I think we are working hard collectively to broaden out the visibility of those opportunities for all young people. But there's more to do. And I think to bring COVID in at this very early stage, I think that there is, we should learn from the experience that we're currently living. We've all introduced digital in terms of our teaching and learning requirements across schools, colleges and universities. That's requiring different approaches, that's requiring different mindsets. It's building different skill sets across the whole system, from the teaching profession right through to pupils and students. And that's opening up, I think, opportunities in both IT and technology, but equally in hairdressing and construction. So how are we teaching and learning how you might tile a roof, or how you might trim a beard, in hair and beauty. So I think we're all being required to be much more creative in our approach to how we deliver teaching and learning, and that generates, I think, creativity and innovation in both the learning and the teaching. And I think that is an opportunity for us all to build on as we look to whatever comes post-COVID.
I think it's an excellent point in terms of, it's natural to be quite gloomy at this moment in time with the kind of immediate outlook ahead. But positively, I think through STEM as an example, the creation of the jobs of the future are going to come from the innovation and creativity associated with some of those areas. And also even touching on climate change, I think the opportunity now to kind of strive for the steps to a green recovery rather than necessarily just continuing as we were, I think will provide various opportunities into various sectors as well. Thank you, Aileen. Can I pose the same question to Ross, please?
I think we're on a journey, and it's good in parts, I think would be a summary. One of the great things that I've seen from the Scottish education system is flexible pathways. And I think this is something that we must continue to encourage. Not everyone will want to follow a sequential kind of education. I grew up in the English education system, and it was literally one year to year to year. I see so much more variety and flexibility in that. And if you take that with the core, what is an entrepreneurial mindset? In my head, it is those problem solving, it's creativity, it's relationship building, it's these underpinning meta capabilities that we need to teach the young people. And I guess in that sense, we then look at how we teach and how we evolve our teaching style and approach, etc. But certainly, if we can continue to encourage that kind of way of thinking, problem solving, creativity, relationship building, I think those are really useful and flexible tools for the toolkit of a young person as they move into whatever career they're going for, whether it's taking an entrepreneurial mindset into a larger organization or a not-for-profit or whatever. These are really good underpinning skill sets. Absolutely,
I couldn't agree more. And I think in basic terms, certainly for me, I don't know if you agree, but like the entrepreneurship that only recently became a bit of a buzzword, and I think it's something that in many ways was forgotten when there was any discussion around entrepreneurship as a whole. And it's far too easy to say that well, I'll never be the successful billionaire. It's not about that. It's about applying that same methodology into whether you work for a small organisation, whether it's public, private, third sector, whatever it may be. So yeah, I totally agree. And can I pose the same question to Brian, please?
Yeah, I would certainly go along with what Aileen's mentioned. I think we're doing okay, but we can always do better around the entrepreneurship and enterprise skills that we've got. I think that we've got a whole host of amazing practitioners and teachers and educators and education professionals working out there, and there's a lot of resource that they get access to with the likes of Bridges to Business programme, the company programme, SIE, Converge, Scottish Edge, etc. So there's loads of this great stuff that's going on that can be embedded, or it can be extracurricular to what's already going on in the institutions. But I still think there's room to do better. We've got to get out the classroom, I think, is a key thing that we need to do. And I mean the virtual classroom as well as the physical classroom. You know, so learning opportunities exist out with the campuses, and you've got to get involved in those. But how we do that is we need to get industry engagement, and we need to get the likes of the ILD on side, the FSB, the Chamber of Commerce, all these people who are able to recognise, you know, whatever the technical aspect is, whether it's in sports or the arts or whatever, that there's opportunities for you to engage with industry and for industry to engage with the education sector, because they recognise what skills are out there, what skills are needed, and what kind of skills are going to use in the future, those entrepreneurial skills. But you focus on leadership, you focus on empathy, you focus on digital skills, selling skills, communication skills, these kind of things that you can teach. You just have to contextualize them within a subject area, and reward students accordingly for those, as Richard said, I believe, those meta skills. Ross said about those meta skills. You can't do that unless we've got really experienced, knowledgeable coaches. That doesn't necessarily just mean teachers. I mean coaches. There's other people that we need to bring into the education sector who can also teach our young people and our students.
Again, at the risk of agreeing with everything today, it's something that I personally benefited from. If anyone has not been along to Young Enterprise Scotland's campus at Rookin Glen, I would encourage going along to understand and appreciate the opportunities of different types of learning, albeit dependent upon the nature of the programmes, etc. But it's a fantastic facility you guys have, Brian, and it certainly expands and opens the mind to, you know, it doesn't just need to be, you know, a continuation of the norm. And finally, and last but not least, can I pose the same question to Tom, please?
Yeah, thanks, colleague. I don't disagree with what's been said up to now. In fact, I hear it in the same sort of discussion. I'm coming at it a slightly different approach. I see it as how we're teaching and supporting our students to be entrepreneurial. And I think in my long career of trying to push academic practice and changing how we teach and support students from BLEs through to use of Zoom or whatever we're using in the hybrid learning model, it's very much about two parameters. It's about risk embracing, and it's about the current system being quite often risk averse. And there's a fear of trying to do something different, and the systems are set up such a place that to play safe. In actual fact, if you can try something and perhaps it doesn't fully work, then perhaps you learn from that particular model. I think the current system is a positive thing for me, and the sadness of COVID is it creates an opportunity for learning and teaching that I see that's long overdue. Because the system we have in place is a didactic system, mainly. It encourages passive students, it encourages a reliant student and a feeling of a dependent student of saying, what do I need to learn? And I think that's the kind of sage and the stage approach. I think if we're to move this forward, we have to try and make it collaborative, we have to make it active, we have to make it resilient students and independent students, and students perhaps who join the dots. And I liken that to didactic is what to learn, collaborative is how to learn for life. So I think teaching entrepreneurial skills has to build self-confidence and self-esteem in our students to try something different and not be discouraged from doing so. I think the current system, and I see it in my own college, is let's make do and mend until the old system returns. And we're missing an opportunity. In the 7 months that have passed, I've been very frustrated with the lack of activity in terms of moving things forward, not to fully online, but to this collaborative on-campus, off-campus, hybrid, online, blended, whatever you call it. It's basically about changing how we teach and support our students from this modular assessment, large essays, to a kind of a hybrid learn system of chunked up learning, or looking at different methods of assessing. And so I think there's a great opportunity here, and from that will come a natural ability to teach entrepreneurial skills.
Great, thanks, Tom. And just to follow on from that point and to stick with you for now, do you mind me asking the role of teachers or lecturers I think it's widely accepted that is more important than ever. What support do you think that they need at this moment in time or over the coming years?
Well, I think they need two things. I mean, when I took up this post as previous post, my job was to create space for them to develop and become scholarly active and look at different ways of teaching. People go into the classroom and often shut the door and say, don't come in. So we have to open up the classrooms and put the collaborative type teaching in. In previous posts I've been in, colleagues who have been traditional teachers, not necessarily young whiz kids that you'd expect to take these things up, but traditional teachers and mature parts of their career have undertaken this active learning approach and basically been reinvigorated in the learning. And students have felt this is they're turning up early for class, they're staying late after the class because of this active learning environment that's learning the way they learn. I've got a 24-year-old son. He learns 5 different ways. I learned going to the Mitchell Library and studying. That's the kind of difference. What staff need is to remove the fear and the feeling of, I don't know how to use this. And we do that by hand-holding, by scaffolding round about them, by putting on how to use Zoom for large classes. How can you chunk up different types of learning over an hour rather than a PowerPoint slide set, which is a traditional approach that's often taken. Don't get me wrong, there's really great teaching and learning going on in the didactic system, but there needs to be a push towards, let's forget about some of the things we've done. Yeah, the lecture's good. There's nothing wrong with a 10-minute lecture, 20-minute lecture. But I've taught young 24-year-old physics teachers who do 4-hour lectures, and I think, why? Because the students turned off after 20 minutes. So the staff need support, they need time, they need space, they need a confidence again in dealing with what they see as natives when they're immigrants, and really they're not, because these natives don't know everything, and the immigrants know a lot that just need to be technologically.
That's some great points, Tom. Aileen, do you mind me posing the same question to you? Do you agree with Tom? Do you have a different opinion on it?
So yes, I support much of what Tom has said. I think there is an enormous amount of support that we need to offer to teaching staff right across the system, schools, colleges and universities, because our expectations of how they will deliver their teaching job has changed enormously. So, in my own college, I gave staff 3 days notice to be off site. So they packed their desks, packed their laptops, went home and started to teach. And South Lanarkshire College delivered teaching. We had between 70 and 80% student engagement over the entire period of lockdown of last term, which was, I think, a huge commendation to both staff in terms of their willingness to flex, be creative, and deliver engaging tutorials and lessons to students, but absolutely a testament to students' willingness to engage in what was at that time, if you recollect from March, a truly unique moment in global history. So we have, in our college, invested in significant CPD to support our staff. So that'll be the scaffolding that Tom has described. But we've utilised partnerships from other bits of the system that are already expert in the space. So we've worked with the Open University, we've worked with colleagues in UHI, for example, who have a history of delivering in a digital remote way. So we've learned lessons from other partners, and that's been great. One point that Tom has mentioned, I think, is really important: building staff confidence in delivering in this new and blended way is critically important, because and I think it's not necessarily an age piece. I think it just is, it's what you're used to in terms of how you deliver. So the confidence piece about being able to use video, to use YouTube, to use different types of tools to deliver tutorials in how to build a brick wall, how to paint, how to hang wallpaper, how to cut hair, how to deliver business administration, because certainly in the college system, the offerings, so we all offer hundreds of courses right across many different types of curriculum. So we are expecting our lecturing staff to do different, to behave differently, to teach and learn themselves differently, and that's an enormous expectation, I think, over a really tight time frame. So that so we have all been we've all been required to invest heavily in training and development, and that's an ongoing piece. So our relationship with the Open University is an ongoing piece up until Christmas, and we'll take a view and evaluate what else is required in the run up to that, and should that need to be extended, then we'll continue that relationship. And equally, I think we need to be quite thoughtful. There's a teaching perspective, there's a learning perspective. So, you know, our students have come into college in previous years and have an expectation of the student experience that they would receive. So they would expect either standard lectures or tutorials in classrooms surrounded by colleagues, or you know, or demonstrations in workshops or salons, again surrounded by, you know, fellow students and teaching staff. And we've had to kind of re-educate our students about, you know, about their own expectations about what's possible for us to deliver. And what's expected of them in terms of a blended approach. So they are, you know, I think you know, all colleges across Scotland are delivering in a blended way. So we have students and staff in on a timetable on a part-time basis. So they are, you know, they are on campus on a part-time basis, and they are studying or teaching from home on a part-time basis. And that's, you know, that's quite a unique approach to teaching and learning, and unusual for all of us. So as I say, we've invested heavily in our teaching staff, and that's important that the, you know, the teaching experience remains professional and exciting and innovative for the learner. But equally, we've been thoughtful about the need to invest in our students, because it's important that they're able to access the learning, and that the student experience for them, whilst very different from in previous years, remains as positive as we're able to offer it. Thanks.
Absolutely. So I'm intrigued to hear, Aileen, that, you know, your attendance is 70-80% to the virtual sessions. How does that compare to real life? What would you normally look at? I appreciate it will differ across faculties, etc.
So we're higher currently now that we're back kind of properly in, you know, in a blended way. So that was across the period of lockdown, when everybody was, you know, locked in their homes. So that was phenomenal, I think, at that point, and that we were one of the highest performing colleges in Scotland, of the colleges that measured student engagement over that period. And you know, as I say, at that time, when this was a seismic shift for all of us, you know, we all went home, we locked our doors, and barely left the house. So then, you know, as I say, that was unusual. It's not, so we are higher ordinarily in terms of student attendance and engagement, because, you know, our college, South Lanarkshire College, is currently the top performing college in Scotland for retention and attainment, and, you know, and we pride ourselves on the efforts we make to really reach out to our students, to engage them, to encourage them to participate in in all of the college possibilities. And that's different this year. So we're working much more closely with our student association this year, and really supporting them to support their students to make the most of the college experience. So things like Freshers Week, for example, very different this year, entirely remote, all digital, but still enormous fun. And you know, and that's, I think that's a really important piece for me about the student experience and the learning experience. Is, of course, we are about delivering qualifications and ensuring student success and enabling a successful transition from point A to point B. So whether it's from an HNC to an HND, or through a modern apprenticeship, or into employment, student success is, of course, critically important to what we do. But I'm sure we've all been students at one point. It should be a fun experience too. You go to college or university because you want to make new friends, you want to broaden your horizon in all sorts of ways, and you do want to have fun. So it's really important to us as a college, and I think for the higher education institutions across Scotland to be really quite thoughtful about the wider student experience. So how do we ensure that they engage with the learning and that they're successful in the learning piece of it, but how do we continue to inject in a safe way some elements of fun so that it remains enjoyable as a learning experience for them.
Great, absolutely. And just continuing with the technology theme, if I can come back to you, Richard, how can technology help deliver an education revolution and ensure no one is left behind? It's often discussed around attainment gaps, etc. What's your opinion in the advancements of technology and what lies ahead? Sorry, Richard, you're on mute.
Sorry. I think there's a lot of research coming out now about technology being able to enrich the way we learn. Touching on what Tom said around access to devices and where and who owns the who owns the education. So a lot of personalisation and mobility with students now, where they're being given responsibility in the way they learn with the technology, where they use that technology. So whether they use it at school, at home, in sports fields, in museums. We've got examples in Kelso where there are, beehives. So the way they educate and take that education. And then I suppose on the teaching side, is how we support the teachers. So very much agreeing with Tom and Aileen around confidence in teachers, and a lot of our solutions are as much about supporting teachers in embedding the use of technology in the right way and keeping teaching and learning at the front of that, and really helping them develop the skills that they need. And I suppose the other element we're seeing a lot of at the moment is obviously COVID, is the comms and the accessibility. Borders, for example, was at 96% usage, literally just after lockdown in their secondary schools, which was massive. Yeah, and obviously at that point, as we all know, very, very key. So yeah, I think there's a lot of examples coming through where technology can help, but we should always, I think, remember, it's the thing I've learned as an IT delivery person, is it's all about the education, it's all about the teaching and learning, and I have to enable that and support it to be successful, basically. But lots of learnings in COVID. We were delivering to home, we were sending devices to people's homes, and they were building them online using YouTube videos. As Tom alluded to, very different. We've learnt to act in very different ways to support education at a really challenging time, and ideally, respecting the old ways, but not necessarily always going back to the old ways as well.
I think that various people have touched upon it, but we as an organisation, the education per se is not our bread and butter. It's just part of what we do and part of the sectors we cover. Yeah. But collaborations and partnerships have been key for us in terms of not just how we move out of COVID times, but how we can best, in our case, create the most readable, shareable, likable content that, recognising that partnering with the right technology companies allows us to do that.
Yeah.
Ross, can I ask the same question to yourself and how you think technology will help deliver that education revolution?
So I like the word revolution. So I think we've had a bit of a revolution over the last few months, and we need to continue that revolution. I think that's some of the comments from Tom and Aileen there is absolutely the case. But I think we need to start looking at how can technology break barriers that may have caused us problems in the past. I mean, one of the things that I'm very keen on is diversity and inclusion. How do we make it possible for people to return to the teaching profession or enter the teaching profession, maybe following having a family or switching careers from a business career or a technology career into education? How might technology allow that? I mean, we can learn from anywhere and we can teach from anywhere, and that's a gross simplification, I know, but it's a truism in its own right. So how do we actually look at the use of technology to allow, for example, we know we have a shortage of computer studies teachers, and we need to encourage people to join the teaching profession at whatever level, and not necessarily be sort of taken straight into a higher paid job, etc. in technology. How might we sort of enable, say, part-time working and supporting schools? I mean, we've got some great systems out there. Founders for Schools is an organisation that connects businesses and not just businesses, people who are in their career with schools, and okay, it's a school level, primary and secondary school level, but that could be extended into even further into colleges. And it takes 4 minutes for a teacher, once they're registered, it takes 4 minutes for them to find and invite somebody who's got relevant skills to come through. And that's a platform. So that's how technology, that's one example of how technology can maybe start that revolution of we talk about entrepreneurial mindset. Bring support the teachers, make it easy for the teachers to engage with the business community, with the outside of their school, to bring those kind of connections into the school. I think that's really important. If you put somebody from business in front of a young person for four occasions over through their secondary career, then it dramatically changes their employability and potentially their choices as well. So,
absolutely, and I think to bring Brian in this one, Brian, as regards to kind of embedded entrepreneurship and technical and vocational education, how do we best achieve that to ensure learners are prepared for life beyond their educational institutions?
I have to apologise. I'm not hearing the question. I'm assuming it's part of the education revolution, ensuring no one is left behind.
Apologies, Brian. Can you hear me? Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Sorry, I was just going to take it slightly into the kind of technical and vocational side, and how we ensure learners are best prepared for life beyond their education institutions.
Okay. Yeah, I guess, contextualising as a teacher, as someone who's been in education, contextualising the learning that's going on to what a career is going to look like, or potentially going to look like that, to make sure that you're understanding the kind of work skills and workplace skills that are going to be needed. There's always ways that you can include that kind of stuff into the teaching and learning that's going on, and into the assessments as well. Whether that's a practical or a theoretical written assessment, or whatever it happens to be, I certainly think you can definitely do that. But just to cover on a couple of the points as well, within the HE and the FE sector, it certainly happens a lot, because they're moving closer to the labour market. But like Ross said there too, those interventions happen at the earlier stages. You are drastically reducing the chance of that young person being unemployed. So I think those things happen earlier, need to happen earlier. So they're aware of what work is, because there's a myth around work, maybe when you're at a young age, that it's a dangerous place or a scary place. So we've got to really relax that and make sure that people are aware that going to work is an enjoyable experience. Build their confidence around that. I think that's a key thing. Technology can do that and can support that, but I keep on, I'm hopefully going to bore people with what I say here, but pedagogy before technology. Technology is an enabler, absolutely. But if you just think about the technology, you're not really thinking about the teaching and learning that's going on. And I think if you forget what you're there to do in the first place, and you just off you go, you're going to forget what you're trying to achieve from an education perspective. And you put your pedagogy first before your technology.
Oh, very, very important point, Brian. I must say I've thoroughly enjoyed the debate. Unfortunately, like most things, time is of the essence. So I want to just provide the opportunity for everyone to, provide some closing remarks. So we'll stick with you, Brian. And if I can ask everyone to summarise in roughly 30 seconds or so, if you don't mind. So, Brian, if we're to continue Scotland's position as a leader in entrepreneurial vision, what are the key factors you think we need to deliver success?
I would suggest that we need to focus more on our coaches, our teachers, our educators. You look at other industries, you look at sport, you look at Spain at football. They've got an abundance of very highly skilled coaches, and there's no accident at all that they're one of the best football nations. You have to look at your coaches and think, if I can improve and increase the capacity of the coaches to deliver an entrepreneurial mindset or an education system, whatever that technical subject is, you're going to improve the labour and the skills market that you've got at your disposal.
Thanks, Brian. And the same question to Tom.
I think, quick summary, I think I agree with Brian on a number of issues there. It's about it's about the guide on the side, not the side on the stage, first of all. So it's got to be a fit for purpose educational system, and we've a great opportunity. We're at a crossroads here. Let's not make do and mend. Let's jump the other way and try and make something worthwhile. It's about three things for me. Pedagogy first has to be first. It's got to be innovative pedagogy. we currently assess people using 4 methods: essays, exams, and whatever else, or a project. There's 250 ways to assess students. Let's use them. They say that SQA holds us back. They don't. We hold ourselves back, saying SQA don't allow us to do that. So let's embrace that change and let's unpick what that. It's about appropriate technology. Technology almost has to be invisible, and it's just a natural tool we use. If it's too difficult to learn, my technical staff have to spend a lot of time educating staff. If it's too difficult to say, I can't do that. And finally, it's about learning spaces. It's about learning spaces face-to-face, which are important for the social aspect that Aileen mentioned earlier. That's why students go to college. It's about learning spaces online, whether it's hybrid learning or whether it's purely online learning. And it's about collaborative learning, whether it's Zoom-based or whether it's in the classroom. It's about creativity. It's about working in groups. It's not didactic. It's about the collaboration.
Thank you, Tom. And Ross.
I think we're at a pivotal point. We have a unique opportunity at the moment. We've just seen the Scottish Government wholeheartedly accept the Logan report, which looks at entrepreneurialism and technology in the technology sector. And there's an alignment in the education side of that. There's a momentum that's building, and it's not that we're ignoring what's happened before. There's an opportunity to go forward and really pick that energy, and that needs investment. That needs investment from business. That needs investment from government. I think the one part of that is the word co-create. When we are looking at going forward, we have educationalists who are excellent at what they do, and we have employers who know what's needed out there. And if we can co-create more of the curriculum, then I think that would be a really big impact.
Thank you. And Richard.
Yeah, I just agree with most of what's been said, to be honest. I think the big one for us, which is interesting being an IT company, is it starts with the teaching and learning. So, you know, that, as the guys pointed out, that's the end game. So for us supporting that, and I think Tom mentioned if I'm spoke about, there's an issue normally. So that's a big one that we enable in the background. I think the access and the equity to learning is important, to the technology, the tools, but the learning as well. So I think we've learned a lot of that in COVID, and as everybody said, we need to make sure we keep that going and we build on that. And to be fair, yeah, it is a journey. I think the other thing we've seen is supporting communities during COVID. So, you know, our stakeholders are the teachers and the students and the parents, you know, some of the councils. So can the communication and the platform be used for other positives, education, healthcare, you know, social care? So think about the wider stakeholders and community. And then I think, touching on what Ross said, really mixing the employers and the education and at an earlier stage around supporting children into, you know, giving opportunities to all, really, and letting them know that, you know, everybody can be successful and get on, you know, in lots of different ways. That's it for me. Thanks.
Thank you, Richard. And last but not least, Aileen.
Thanks, David. So I support everything that colleagues have already said. I think we are at a real moment of opportunity. I think we should build on the crisis that we are surviving, and really seek to embed all the learning that we've all gendered over this period. One of the additional points I would make, I think, what we need to be really thoughtful about ensuring that what our students learn is absolutely aligned to the skills needs of current and future employers. So that, you know, brings us back to that kind of co-creation and industry engagement piece between the skills system and enterprise and economy. And so I think it's absolutely critical that there is continued close engagement with industry, that there's, you know, improved understanding of current and future skills gaps, and that the system, so schools, colleges and universities, are able to fully incorporate that data and intelligence as part of curriculum development, so that what the offer is in the tertiary system absolutely meets current and future needs of the economy, and that will help with the recovery and revival that, you know, I think we are all alert to, you know, that there's a real need for this to be a skills-led recovery, for it to be sustainable looking forward. And I think that's really important, that the skills system works in absolute partnership across the school system itself, but but absolutely with industry and with employers to understand what the opportunities are and how do we best skill up both young people, but equally adult returners, because there'll be a whole need for upskilling and reskilling for adult returners who will be coming out of some either businesses or some industries or sectors and will need to reskill so that they're able to be employable in different sectors. And there's a real role, I think, for the school system to support that. And the technology, of course, sits in and around all of that. I think that's an underpinning support for all of our delivery. But, as other colleagues have said, that's not the driver. The driver is the education and skills, and we need to make sure that the curriculum and the provision is right, and that the teaching and learning is absolutely fit for purpose in any post-COVID landscape.
Great, thank you. All that's left for me to do is firstly thank all the panellists today. Thank you very much for taking the time. I appreciate you're all very, very busy. I'd also like to thank CGI, City of Glasgow College, Skills Development Scotland, South Lanarkshire College, Young Enterprise Scotland and ITI Communications for making our campaign possible. And to continue the debate, please look out for our weekly coverage each Wednesday within the Herald Scotland and social channels. And please continue watching, and as there will be further debates to discuss over the continuation of 2020 into 21 and beyond. Thank you.
Thanks.
David.